Hello and welcome back to Epic Your Life podcast. I'm Carlos and this is my gorgeous wife Chantel. And today we have some incredible guests with us. We're excited to be talking to them and interviewing them. They are part of our legacy leadership here at Epic Your Life. Some incredible entrepreneurs, amazing husband and wife, and amazing mother and father of two beautiful children. And they are also incredible digital marketing geniuses with their web design business, Troyer websites. I'd like to introduce Eric and Katrina Schlabach. Welcome.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, so glad you're here.
So, Eric and Katrina, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, as we get started on this journey that, we want to kind of expose some beliefs here. We'd love to know your background.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I'm Katrina, as we said. I live in Texas, and I grew up Mennonite, the Mennonite background, and a lot of beliefs went around that, especially relating to sexual content and stuff. A lot of shame, a lot of guilt and shame was put on that. And so, yeah, we're going to explore a little bit of that. Anything else?
No. I'm Eric, and we grew up Amish, New Order Amish, for those of you who know what that is. And yeah, we've lived in Kentucky and now in Texas, and now we'll probably move on to other things as well. So looking forward to a interesting conversation about our journey in connection, intimacy, sex, and whatever else Chantel. We're not quite sure what Chantel's going to ask us yet, so we're just going to wait and see.
I would like to see a little bit more background too.
Yeah,
Okay.
So tell me when each of you, like, so Katrina was Mennonite. When did you leave the Mennonite church? And same for you, Eric. What age, kind of did you decide you wanted to move in a different direction? And then, how long have you guys been married? What did that look like, coming together? Where were you at when you guys came together as far as your spiritual and religious beliefs?
And also maybe give us a little background for viewers that don't know what a Mennonite is or an Amish is. They may have a picture in their mind. So give us a little bit of background on that as well. That'd be great.
I mean, they may just have the Hollywood version, right?
Yeah. Well, I grew up Mennonite. Eric grew up Amish. So there's a difference there. I would have been used to wearing my hair up in a cap on my head. We called that a covering. And we always wore dresses. Actually, we were put in the Mennonites I was a part of, we were put in a certain standard of the style of dresses, the color of shoes, the color of socks.
Very structured.
Yeah, just a lot of structure surrounding that. Let's see, we weren't allowed to have too much internet exposure. That was very monitored. If we did have it, a lot of tracking was done and stuff. So yeah,
but the Mennonites did have like electricity. You did.
Yes.
Cars.
That's what I was gonna say. Like some of the Amish background that he would have come from was a little different than what like the Amish you think about that drive the buggies and don't have electricity. The Mennonites definitely are more up and going, a lot more involved. They do have internet, at least the ones I was part of. We do have internet, especially for businesses. You need that.
More modern technology.
So yeah, a lot of more modern.
You have televisions? Mennonite? Did that?
No, television was a no-no. Movies are no-nos.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
at
then
least
you
when
all
I
dress pretty much
No
the same
radio.
way?
what
Did you all dress
Sorry,
the
what?
same way pretty much?
Yeah,
Yeah.
dressed pretty similar.
Yeah, all dressed the same way. Like we all had this structure that we all looked very
But
similar to each other.
they're all based on Anabaptists back from in Switzerland and Germany. If you want to look that up, you know, the Anabaptist background. It's a fantastic heritage. It's a there's a lot of strengths in that heritage, and we can get into that. That's a whole nother rabbit trail that we can get into. But yeah, so I grew up Amish, which is just one other flavor of the Anabaptist circle. So Mennonites are kind of one branch. They have strengths and kind of patterns of mindsets and stuff that they specialize in, and then Amish are a little bit different. They kind of branched off, all from the same tree, but they have their own customs and way of doing things. And we were a lot more conservative than what Katrina would have grown up as. We would have, you know, made all our own clothes or majority of our own clothes. We would have not driven any vehicles, but we would have, we would have had electric and some modern conveniences like that. But I think the point of the Anabaptists is a lot to stay away from pop culture. From anything that's popular, culture, common culture, they would stay away. And we used to joke about it, but it's kind of true. They typically stay anywhere from 10 to 50 years behind modern culture.
Gotcha.
So they make gradual changes, but it's like a decade or several decades behind.
Okay, Eric, share with us the difference between New Order and Old Order Amish.
It's all just like they have their own little beliefs and systems, and they used to be all one Amish. It's either Mennonite or Amish, and then the New Order split off because they wanted they were I think specifically, I'm not a historian. I've read up on some of it, but I believe specifically it was about the new birth. You know, in Christian biblical speaking, the old order as a whole have not believed or practiced a new birth or a regeneration. It was all works, look the part, maybe get to heaven once you die, type of thing. And then the new order came along, or the new order split off. That group faction split off because they were like, okay, we want to believe the New Testament. Biblical speaking, we're supposed to be born again. We're supposed to have assurance of salvation. All these different doctrinal points. So they split off, and that's what Anabaptists, unfortunately, one of the bad things about them is when they don't agree, there's very little ability to have different perspectives. It's all either, if I don't agree, I'm going to go over here and start my own thing, and that's how there's dozens and dozens of different factions, and probably hundreds actually, little groups and factions and circles, and like even the Mennonites is a hugely broad term. There is Amish Mennonites, there's Mennonites, there's dozens of different little factions of Mennonites and Amish that each have their own creed and beliefs, and that's even getting into why we ended up kind of laying down some of those things, is because it's like, you know what, none of you know what is the right way. You all believe that this is the perfect and right way, and yet all of you are different. So it's like, there's, logically speaking, that it makes zero sense.
Right.
It's like, if this is not wrong in one circle, then it's not wrong, and it's this right or wrong thing. And so we decided to leave that behind and go follow after what is life.
That's good.
And so that's kind of where our journey is. I left an Amish Mennonite background community church, I left that behind and I moved to Texas.
At what age?
I was 21. So I left home at 21. I did desire to honor my parents, because that was kind of the thing with my parents, is like, until you're 20, once you're 21, you can go decide what you want to do. So I did honor them with that. And then, yeah, I moved here in the pursuit of finding life and just really discovering what I believe in, why.
Mhm.
Well, and I think
And
I wanted to say too, and just clarification, that Mennonite and Amish is a religion. It's not a culture. Is that correct?
it's both. It's definitely both.
Can you
It's very
explain
much.
that a little bit? Because the people ask that a lot.
It's a culture that has a religion.
Okay, gotcha. That's really well said.
So I would say it's first and foremost a culture, and
Okay.
people argue all the time, oh, it's a cult. Well, yeah, technically speaking, it is a cult. Now, cult typically has a negative connotation. I don't think it has to, and I don't mean it that way. There's so much beauty in gifts and things that have been passed down, values that we love about that culture. However, we have both. We were separately, like, this is not something we did together necessarily. We were seeking different things, that was deeper and more about a life thing versus right and wrong, trying to figure, okay, this is right or this is wrong, up until, oh yeah, now you go to a different church, oh yeah, that's, now you can do that. And it's like these different levels, and the centrist ones look up here and say, oh, these guys are worldly, and they look down here, and
Gotcha.
these guys that are more conservative just kind of laugh at them for not being as enlightened. And it's like, it's that the whole game is just like, it's nonsense.
Right.
I'm plainly speaking.
Straightforward.
We decided we're not. That's not what.
Not
So-
what it's
for us.
supposed to be.
So Eric, at 21, you moved to Texas. You honored your parents until that point, and were like, okay, now I'm gonna go pursue my life. And you moved to Texas, and then what?
I was a bachelor for 4 years, three and a half. And then in the meantime, Katrina had moved down, and she can tell that side of her. Want to tell that side?
I can.
What happened, like how you, or what your journey was?
Yeah, sure. So I was 30 when I moved to Texas. So before that, I would have actually spent 8 of those years teaching at our private schools, the Mennonite schools. I taught at 3 different schools in that year, or those years. And yeah, I in the summer times I'd be with my family, spend it with my family. But as I was just, I don't know, I guess I was like really searching for more truth, more answers. I just wasn't happy with where I was at. There was a lot of, in the youth group that I was a part of, there was a lot of cool people versus not cool people, and just getting caught up in that. I didn't like it. It was just where it just made me like, I didn't want to be a part of that kind of stuff. And I just started searching, and I would listen to speakers online on YouTube secretly, because we weren't really supposed to, it was kind of frowned upon. And I was like listening to a lot of pastors talking and preaching, and I just started to, yeah. Then I had a cousin in Texas that she had Lyme's disease and needed help. So I moved down to help her. She was on bed rest, and she had 3 little boys, and I stepped in and was mom. And the church they were part of was definitely a more open Mennonite church, I'd say. Like, they were not as conservative, put it in our Mennonite language, not as conservative as what I was used to. So I lived there for about a year. And in that year, I just really was like, okay, I'm just done with the church that I was a part of, because I was like living a double standard, if you could say that. Like I would do things that was okay for the church in Texas, but the church that I was a part of at home, they would not have approved. And I didn't want to live that kind of life. That's sincerely, I did not. And I was like, okay, I started praying about it. I actually spent a lot of time fasting and praying and asking God what I was supposed to do. And in that week of fasting, God said that he actually spoke to me audibly. And he said, I'm supposed to leave my church and stay in Texas. And he said, I have a guy for you. And I was 30. I was a older single girl. Moving to Texas looked kind of bleak because I did not know many single guys. And the single guys I didn't know, I didn't think were options because I was still Mennonite. So it was kind of like, God, really? Like, but I just stepped out in faith. I did that. I talked to my bishops, my parents, and we made closure on that. And yeah, it's amazing how God worked, because then it never, like, I was going to join the church, Mennonite church here, but then that actually never worked out. Not that they wouldn't have left me. They wanted me to join, but it just didn't work out. And I think it was actually God working, because then Eric entered the picture. He worked for my cousin's husband that I was working for. So they worked together. And so Eric would come over quite a bit, just play guitar, hang out. I would cook them food and I love to cook. So anyway, Eric enjoyed my cooking. And yeah, and then he kind of, guess, took interest in me. You want to say your story?
That's awesome. So from the background that each of you come from,
yeah.
What was your belief about sex and masturbation? What were you taught? What was your belief and why? And what was your journey in the midst of that? Like let's say pre-marriage, right?
Yeah.
So I was an older single girl, and obviously we didn't live a loose, like, I didn't have sex out of marriage. That was very frowned upon, and I didn't. But as a girl, as a woman, I still had those sexual desires, and I felt a lot of shame surrounding that subject. I felt like I couldn't talk to a lot of people about it. But I did. I masturbated because I didn't know how to deal with the feelings I was feeling. And a lot of times it did lead into some, like, I'd say light pornography. But as a whole, that wasn't a big addiction of mine. It was more, I think it was a lot of feelings I didn't know what to do with, and I would masturbate. I felt a lot of, because I was older single girl, I felt a lot of rejection because I wasn't married and all my friends were married and I wanted to be married. And so I had those feelings on top of it, and I would masturbate kind of as a something to cover up those feelings. Okay. Kind of like a coping mechanism. And then, of course, I was ashamed. I felt very shameful about what I was doing. So yeah, it got so bad at one point, I almost had a breakdown, I'd say, emotionally. I did open up and talk to my mom. My mom was very understanding. She was very kind about it. And she prayed with me, and, you know, you do all the religious things, you pray with me, and you find victory. I feel like after that it went a lot better, but it's still, like, I still had it. And yeah.
So it would be safe to say you were trying to, like, turn off the desire, essentially, even by praying and asking God. Is that pretty typical?
I never really prayed that God would turn off the desires for me. That is something I never did. I actually, it's interesting because I actually, through my whole process of journey of it, I realized that there was two types. I had a coping mechanism of masturbation, but I also had a release. And I could recognize the difference. I came to where I could recognize the difference. Mm-hmm. So my coping mechanism I knew was wrong, But then like the release part, I didn't feel guilty about. I actually came to that point on my own. Because it was like a thing of like, I just didn't feel guilty. And I actually remember praying and asking God to just help me understand, like show me. And it wasn't necessarily take it away, but just, you know, tell me if it is wrong, tell me. And I think that's what he was like. He helped me to understand the two different ways of me doing it. And so then I gained a lot of freedom in the coping mechanism way of it. Like I learned to, especially a lot of it had to do with my singlehood. And so I found a lot more happiness with what I was doing and fulfillment and what I was doing. And that took away a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. So you found other outlets of coping, ways to channel that energy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
That's so cool because, you know, we hear so much of the other way, right? Where people are just like praying to God that they take this from me because I don't want to sin.
Yeah.
This is pure sin and I don't want to sin anymore. Take it from me. And then they end up, you know, getting married in their 40s and they're like, I have no desire.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful. I mean, it's really cool that your journey in particular looked the way it did and that you had the gift of differentiating the two. That's really awesome.
Yeah. I'll add this. I am a very much of a person. I love to like study out stuff. So I would Google a lot of things. And I did do a lot of searching. Like I also realized that masturbation is a hot topic in the world. Like there was Christians that said it was okay, there was Christians that said it was wrong, and I read some of those both sides. That kind of opened my eyes to that. Oh, you know what, there might be something about like more to this. So that's why I just pray. Like I would pray and ask God, I just want to know, am I doing right or am I doing wrong? Show me what's right. And I think he did. I mean, I know he did. I know he helped me find that.
And how about for you, Eric?
Yeah, I'd say it was somewhat similar. One thing about our upbringing is that sex and sexual desire was never talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad, said a few facts of life, technical stuff, but there was no emotional or there's no understanding or talking about how to actually navigate this whole thing. And so I ended up being sexually active at a very young age as far as masturbation, even being exposed to porn at a young age and becoming addicted. It was just a long cycle of, pretty much all through from puberty up through my late teens. I was in this cycle of addiction to masturbation and fantasy, and I carried a lot of shame with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time, a lot of years to come to to understand that there's not something wrong with me. I think the big thing that I can identify with as much is that I felt like something was fundamentally screwed up with me, that I had a strong sexual desire. Like I just felt so twisted, like complete anomaly, and I carried a lot of shame and condemnation, self-hatred from that.
Right.
And so I had zero confidence, around. So the thing that was missing though is I then also did not have any real connection. Like I had no emotional connection with my siblings, with my sisters. I mean, yeah, at surface level. And my mom, and I remember, and I think that it was just all part of the cycle of feeling disconnected and using sex as the coping mechanism to be in balance again and to feel better about myself again. and then this horrible cycle of shame, and so and then be like, okay, I gotta break free from this. And so I'd be like, especially as I grew older, and I studied psychology and emotional healing and spiritual healing, and like I studied this for the past since I was 15 years old, 14 years old, and I'm almost 30 now. So it's like I've studied this a really, really long time. And back then, I learned new things, and starting with spiritual strongholds of, my mom, learning that my mom was very violently sexually violated as a child, and just some of those emotional things that got passed on even. And I don't know if I have to go into that whole thing, but bottom line is, when I came to a realization, or when I was able to let go of some of the shame, and it started breaking the cycle, and it'd be like times of I felt freedom, and then I still had a time knowing how to channel the energy. So that was then the later years, especially upper teens, early 20s. That was my challenge. Was okay, breaking. There was still shame and stuff that I dealt with, and there was later on I got easy access to the internet. I had a cell phone, and so sometimes that became an issue. Occasionally it was like, oh, then so I would have these bouts of like porn addiction, and then it'd be like, I know I don't want this. Is not what I want for my life. I'm not going to do that. And then I would get clean and stay that way for a year, and then, but then at the same time, it's like these sexual desires need to be channeled somewhere,
Right.
and so that's kind of my story on I think where I left it then is, and the one thing I discovered also is that same way with Katrina, is that masturbation can be simply just a release.
Yeah.
That it can be that. And for me personally, I had to be careful because it was very easy to be addicted to it as well, and use it as a coping mechanism.
Right.
And it became a thing of it's kind of like drinking alcohol or smoking or whatever other vices. It's like it can very quickly, especially for somebody like me that was addicted, and then it's like, okay, it can quickly turn into a cycle of I have to have it. And it's good. It was really good for me to learn self-control. Like I can learn self-control, and I can put that energy into my business or whatever else, or getting married.
Getting married. So when did you get married? How long have the two of you been married?
This year's going to be 5 in August. Awesome. 5 years.
Now, tell me about, so we're talking about sex and masturbation and what we believed growing up and where you were at, right? So bringing that into a marriage, what were some of the conversations, and then how did you come to, your unified belief, right? Because that's a whole transition. Was there some struggle there? Because when we deal with identity, right? We're dealing with great amounts of shame and guilt and kind of confusion on what we believe and why, right? Even religiously, culturally, we're in these big transitions. So when the two of you got married, what did that look like for you?
Well, that first year was pretty hard.
No pun intended.
We had
I'd say it was.
we had a lot of stuff to work through, like personally, because of the shame that I like surrounding sexuality and stuff that I dealt with. It was, yeah.
It's like 30 years of not of trying to control it and manage the desire, and then all of a sudden, oh, now you can just be. It's like a brain a mental reset.
I mean, I was gonna say, as much as I did study and I kind of found the difference between the two, like the coping versus the release for masturbation, I still like had my Mennonite background. Okay. So I still had that shut down. Like I tried not to do it because I felt like it
programmed.
Yeah, it is programming. It was wrong. Like it made me feel guilty at times. So I mean, I understood it, but yet at the same time, I really tried hard not to. And so it's suppressing those emotions. And then when all of a sudden you are married and you're supposed to be, just, having sex and enjoying it and be not shameful about you and your body. And it's definitely a mind game switch. Yeah. And I had to work through some of that.
Yeah. I think for me though, it was not the sex part that was difficult to work through. For me, it was actually more the connection part. Like, and maybe men are more like that. I don't know, but it was easy for me to have sex and be romantic and do all the stuff. And we don't have to go into details there, but the emotional connection that's beyond sex, it's like the porn mentality, if you want to call it that, where it's just a gratification thing.
And that spiraled even in our relationship because I felt that, and even early on, I mean, he was very open about his things that he was dealing with, and if pornography or whatever was an issue, and of course that made me feel like I often felt not good enough, or because of porn. And so I struggle with a lot of my own, self-image, not good enough. And then that spiraled that whole, like the connection part, where I didn't feel like I measured up. So
how did you guys get through that season, and what do you believe and why now? And like, what does that look like? Because you've obviously had a transformation. Oh, yeah. We know that, but the viewers don't know that. So why don't you share, like, I mean, obviously if the first year was the hard year and you're like, man, I don't know how we're going to get through this.
We were, one of the things that we were super committed to, both of us, that coming into our marriage, is that we are going to work on improving ourselves. And I think that really laid the foundation. And the other thing though is, when we came into marriage, we had no preparation about managing needs and desires and expressing them and feeling safe to express them. And I think the big turning point for me, or one of them, I would say, Carlos, you had asked earlier, what is the big aha moment? I would say the one for me was I can trust women. And it was a really huge trust issue with me, and when I was able to break through that, and going back to the ladies in my life growing up, having certain beliefs and experiences and things that I carried, wounds that I carried from that, switch, and then anything that Katrina did, then of course it reinforced that belief. And so that caused the disconnect. And the other thing, there's still like a kind of a sense of shame, like religious programming has put a lot of shame on the sex drive, and so I carried that some. But just switching that trust factor and just building trust, and working through triggers instead of just shutting down. I would say that would be the number one factor for me as a husband, as a father, as a husband, to connect to her heart. And the more connected we are on a emotional level and on a trust level, and I don't know if that's all very emotional, but the more we built that trust, it becomes a thing where you truly become one. And it's not even about the sex, it's about the intimacy.
Wow.
And then it takes the sex to a whole new level, right?
Yes. And so that was even, the mistake that I made and that other people may make, that I've seen is we, as men, we have this sex desire, hey, it's been a little while, you kind of feel that. And so having the trust to the safety where I trust her with my need.
Yeah, it's
And
good.
be like, and like, just telling her like, hey, that felt really, really awkward for me. It was really, really hard for me to express that I need a sexual release.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say about that? There was something I was going to say about that, but anyway, that's just was also part of the journey of just building trust and coming to the place where we truly trust each other. And and then it's a positive cycle. We create a positive cycle. It's either negative or positive, and then it builds on top of itself. The more I deal with my own crap, the more I let go of shame and lean into connection with God and with my identity, the more that it's like we pursue each other, and then we become truly intimate and truly one and flowing together.
So good.
I have a question about, just because some of the viewers watching may be curious. So even about the coping mechanism, and I like to often ask the question about even, is it wrong? Do you believe God it's a sin for us to orgasm? I think it's better said that way. I think when people get stuck on the masturbation thing, oh, well, that's pleasing yourself, it's always wrong. That's debatable too, because again, we want to know what feels good for our husband, our wife, our spouse. But my question would be, to help bring clarity now and your freedom, is even with coping, because some people out there are coping, right? And they use it for coping. I get it. But in the freedom of understanding that, like, if I have to, let me put it this way, if I have to exercise sometimes to cope because I'm stressed out, right? Would that be a sin? So even like understanding the fact that if you have to use it for coping, I think there's freedom in knowing, because what my experience personally, and then I'll ask, this is all part of the question still, to see where your experiences was. Once I recognized and understood there's freedom in knowing that I just need the release, I need the orgasm. And even if I am frustrated in a moment, and when I was younger and I just had an orgasm and masturbate, but if I just had an orgasm versus, because the freedom was in that versus the porn. So once I realized I just want to have a release and I was just with that, then I no longer needed the porn. That's what's so fascinating to me. But it was almost like before, when I thought it was sin and guilt and shame was on me, then I would be like, oh, screw it. I'm just going to do porn then. Might as well have it both. Right. So it's almost like this interesting mindset. But once I had the freedom, then I no longer needed that. And so I want to get your take on that, because that's what I experienced in my life through that process, that I no longer needed the porn. So first start with you, Eric, and then.
Yeah, for sure. That is actually how I've gotten free of porn. Is, yes, there's just abs 100%. There's self-discipline involved, but I recognize that porn is like a lot of emotions. There's a deeper reason, and so I stopped trying not to look at porn. I did. I stopped trying not to. Instead, I asked myself why.
Mhm.
And as I dug down, it was always because of some much deeper emotional issue. And as I took care of the emotional issue, the desire went away. And even with the, the needing the release versus then going into porn. Now, I will say porn, an addiction rewires your brain. It
Yeah.
does. And that's where the self-discipline comes in. But the initial desire and the thing that feeds it is it's usually, maybe always, a deeper desire. And for me, that was intimacy. I desired intimacy, and
Hmm.
I had walled myself off
Yeah.
of that.
But you
My
didn't know.
entire, huh?
You didn't know what that looked like, what that felt like. You weren't taught anything. I
I'm
mean,
saying,
so there's no examples
yeah.
whatsoever. So we were
Yeah.
just like blindly seeking this feeling, this
Yeah.
fulfillment, from something. And that's where you found it, right? I mean, I think that's so common. And I think it's important to say you're not alone, right? You're not alone in that. There's, whether it's Amish, Mennonite, Baptist, Mormon, I mean, it doesn't matter. You name it, across the board, there is oppression and suppression and lack of
Yeah.
understanding, right? The lack of understanding and the confusion
Yeah.
and the shame and guilt that the Bible has been used against us, right? You know, what a beautiful gift it is when we look at its intentionality, but then you have
Yeah.
man who's just, completely pounded it into us.
Yeah.
And what does that do for our, our view of ourselves and our view of God, right? So, sorry.
It's good. It's good. Super
So
good.
good.
Gina, do you have a thought on that too?
No, I agree. I totally agree with what you said and what Eric, I would have felt the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a crazy thought process. And even let's go here, the release and the importance of that for people watching too is like, that's what the prostate was designed for in men. And we're finding now the rise of prostate cancer and the rise of even men needing, a lot of men my age, 47 years old, needing testosterone.
Mhm.
Or Viagra is on the rise. Why would that be such a prevalent thing for men in their 40s and 50s needing Viagra if it was like, if we were embracing the release
Mhm.
and then embracing what feels good and even creating then the fantasy in our marriage? I'd like you to share a little bit about that. How has it been with the freedom and having this new freedom in your intimacy?
Well, first I want to ask Katrina, because, Eric kind of dropped a bomb with the whole trusting women
Yeah,
factor.
it's true.
I mean, that's a big bomb for a wife, right? It's a bomb when you're like, okay, you have this like realization, is recognition of like, okay, the deeper issue is there's very much so a lack of trust.
Mm.
And so when there's breakthrough in that, Katrina, I'd love to hear your response to that particular breakthrough and the recognition, the realization, and what that part of the journey meant for you personally as the wife, as the bride, and then for your intimacy.
That's good.
So yeah, him learning to trust me was, I would say, it just brought a lot of confidence for myself. Like I was more confident in who I was. I was more confident in our marriage, and even in like our intimacy, confident to just be who I was, not try to be someone else, just be myself. And because it brought a safety, a security. Yeah.
Isn't that
To our,
interesting how she felt safe when you trusted her?
Wow.
I mean, That's real.
And I think too, Eric, this has been a journey for you, even in that trusting. And then let's even go here with how you have started to invest in your wife in a very profound way, right? And can you share that and how that proves, right? The actions prove that you trust.
Yeah, and that ties into a mindset of abundance versus, a hoarding mentality, and realizing that my business, I'm a businessman. I love making money. I love doing business. I love doing. But that aside, I can understand investing into business and expecting a return. And the switch for me came when I realized that, you know what, my home, my wife, my family is my first and largest investment. And before it was just like, oh, make money, 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 and just hoard it and like save it, and and then maybe sometime we can use it. And it's not like that at all. Like, I am continued. The more I invest, she is literally the one that makes my home happen and makes my environment happen.
Wow.
And the more I invest that into her, it's like it is. I don't know really how to explain it other than it's just a completely different mindset. It's a completely different belief of just paying her to like. I wouldn't expect a an employee or subcontractor to work for me and not get paid. Like, I wouldn't do that to a client. I wouldn't do work for not getting paid. I expect a return. And in that same way, it's like I invest time and money and effort into her as what would be a practical example? Giving her stuff that luxuries, investing into luxuries that she does not need, but it's an investment into her confidence. It's an investment into her beauty and investment into her dreams and what she desires.
So good.
And so that investment, then it's about creating a cycle of blessing. It creates a connection. It's a spiritual thing, I think. Like, it creates a flow of a return. I get a return out of that.
So
Well,
good.
It is. When he invests in me, it creates a desire for me to like invest in him and pour out.
It creates
And
that reciprocation.
It's a full cycle, a circle, and a cycle.
Yeah.
We just
If I get by, like, that's how I do for myself so often. It's like, oh, we can get by. It's like, you know what? I don't desire to live in poverty.
Right.
And I don't desire my legacy, my wife and my family to live in poverty. And it's like, they are the first thing that I want to invest in, not the last thing.
So
It's
good.
not an afterthought. It's literally the first responsibility I have as a husband. And maybe that's something that I wish I understood better when I got married. But it's like, a man goes to his wife and they cleave, and it's like that's their first responsibility. It's pursuing the kingdom of heaven. In Christian speak, it's the kingdom of heaven first is us, relationship between us.
So good.
That's right. And it translates across the board, right? It translates, we started out with this topic of even sex and what that looks like in intimacy, right? And that's an investing in each other, right? It's investing into your desires, your needs. It maybe not just look like a money bank, but it's the investment of love bank, right? It's it's what creates the atmosphere, right? And that, also the investment into ourselves
Yeah.
in healing, right? I mean, there's so many different factors that it runs the gamut across the board. And it's
Yes.
truly watching the two of you, I just want to say that has been so powerful over the last few years to see your tenacity to press into the hard things, right? To press into that growth, that healing, that like, I'm going to face this
Come
sucker
on.
that is so hard, that is so programmed, that
Yes.
is so like that fear of trust was really big, Eric.
Yes.
And it was really, really profound. And I'm just so proud of both of you. I think it's just been a joy to come alongside you, to love your kids, to be a
That's
part of
right.
your lives, and to just get to join in this movement of changing and transforming lives, creating extraordinary, whether it's in business, sex, intimacy,
Yes.
our relationship, our marriages, our family, our legacy, all spectrums.
That's right.
Awesome pleasure to do life with you guys. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
And you can find Eric and Katrina on even Epic Your Life, which is on school platform, school.com, Epic Your Life. They are part of our legacy leadership. Matter of fact, this Thursday, tomorrow, or yesterday, I guess, whenever you're watching this replay or not, they will be leading the legacy leadership, the community mentorship, and also you can find them on Facebook. But Eric and Katrina also have their business, which is TroyerWebsitesOfTexas.com. Is that right?
You can't see it on any of that.
No, you can't see it at all.
I'm telling you, they've worked on our websites,
Yeah.
do phenomenal job. Katrina is such an ambassador for women,
Yes.
and how the femininity and beauty of a woman, but yet the strength and confidence of a woman. I've seen both of them defend themselves well as well. There's no wimps there. So they're a powerhouse. So yeah. We're glad you guys took time out of your busy lives and your
Yes.
business and everything and children and all those things to come and be a part of our podcast. It's been a really great time.
Thank you so much. Such gold.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
Such a rich, such richness that we have for people to understand. So we love you guys.
Love you guys. Appreciate you. Thanks
Thanks
again
so
for
much.
being here.
Thank you.
So that was Eric and Katrina Schlabach. And we are Carlos Chantel Campos with Epic Your Life. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll see you next time.